Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. This is everything I hated at the Edge of Fate early preview event when I got to play the expansion at Bungie HQ. To be absolutely clear, this video is focusing on all of the negatives, but there is an entire separate video focused on all of the positives that I'd recommend you maybe watch before this one, because it's probably the better way around to watch the positives and then the negatives here. And also, these negatives are going to be constructive criticism. I'm not here to just hate on Bungie like the internet loves to do, but rather I'm here to provide my feedback about what didn't resonate with me, some maybe directional shifts that I'd like to see in the future, and just some overall thoughts on how things are going to be maybe received by the community, or not received by the hardcore folks, but more so received by newer players who are a little bit more aligned with my current experience level with Destiny. At no point in this video am I going to be claiming to have the decisive opinion about these things. At no point in the video am I going to be saying it has to be my way or the highway. I'm aware that these things are very varied, right? And different people have different opinions. These just happen to be mine. So let's please keep all the conversation respectful in the comment section as always. And without further ado, I'm going to dive into some of the things in the Edge of Fate that I'm skeptical of or I didn't like so much. Let's start with the portal. There is a lot that I like about the portal, and all of that stuff is in that separate video like I mentioned. So the positives are there. This is all the critique stuff. One of the things I don't really like about the portal is that it means that Bungie is not removing the director from the game, but it's no longer going to be being updated as new locations and new expansions come out. And that means that we will not be seeing Kepler on the director screen. You can find everything else on there, but Kepler's not there. And that's going to just continue to grow and grow as time passes. And to me, that kind of sucks, because I really like the director. As much as it might have some issues from a functional standpoint, I really love its aesthetic, and it feels like a really core part of Destiny in a weird way. And for that to no longer be the destination for tracking where you need to go is kind of a shame to me. So I kind of dislike the portal just at face value, because I mean, look how it massacred my boy. And I mean, jokes aside, I think that this does also have serious consequences for the game, because Destiny has a huge number of players who have basically burned out on the game, or they've peeled off the game, they've bounced off the game, and they are potentially able to be captured as returning players at some mysterious unknown time in the future, right? That cohort of players is large. And what we're doing now is we're saying for that returning cohort of players, they're going to get back to the game and it's going to be a new system. Instead of the one that they have some player familiarity with, that's not the end of the world, right? If it's a better system, it's a better system. But it is one extra point of friction in a game where there are a lot of points of friction. However, the portal does seek to try and make it as seamless as possible for new people to sort of get into the action. And so maybe that particular point of critique is kind of balanced out. However, I don't think that the portal solves all of the problems of game complexity and what should I play next that Bungie is maybe hopeful that it will do. I think it's basically going to take several more iterations of the portal before we get really even close to properly solving that problem. So let me explain why I think the complexity is still an issue. If you say to a new player, dear new player, I want you to tell me how I get insert name of specific exotic gun here, which comes from an exotic mission. How do they do that in the game right now? They go to Google, right? If you say to a new player, hey new player, which of these activities will drop you catalysts and which won't? Where does that new player go? They go to Google. If you say to a new player, you've just got back into Destiny after 6 years and you're looking to do the Episode Heresy Act 1 missions and you want to kick those off, where do you go? Now, you might think on that one, you just go to the thing that says Act 1, but you can't launch it currently in the state that the game is in right now without having done some prerequisite stuff. Does the portal solve those problems? As far as I'm aware, it doesn't. It doesn't know that you need to go to a specific NPC in a specific location and talk to them first, and that's what's going to then unlock the first Episode Heresy Act 1 Mission 1 introduction. Like, it doesn't do that. And so as much as Bungie is putting this forth to say, we know we have a problem with people not knowing what to do in Destiny or not feeling funneled appropriately so that they can take some sort of Googling power out of the experience and instead just pour that sort of brain power into Destiny. Like, it's good that they recognize that, but I think the issue is a lot broader than just what should I play today? Like, I think that that's actually a much smaller problem than all of the other individual nitty-gritty little problems that make up the complexity of Destiny's accessibility. And not only that, but I think that part of Bungie's philosophy for the director is to say, we want to make it so that you can play your way, right? Which is a very noble premise that I absolutely back and think is important, right? If you want to power grind in Crucible, you should be able to. If you want to power grind in Gambit, get a life. I'm kidding. But I mean, you're going to have to do something else, I suppose. But the idea that you should be able to play the game the way you want to play it and be rewarded thusly is super valid. The problem is, are we just going to end up really siloed where there's a player that never has any reason to like leave their little hobbit hole and venture out into the world of the other game modes because they can get everything that they need from solo ops, right? I think that this is a bit of a stretch for critique because of the fact that there are plenty of reasons to go to those other modes, like set bonuses. You won't be able to get all the sets from one activity, right? There are reasons to go elsewhere, but I do just sort of wonder if this is kind of narrowing people's focus maybe a little bit, and I wouldn't be surprised if it'll get narrowed and then they'll complain about that. Like, that would be very classic Destiny. And I also, I want to call out specifically actually on solo ops. I was sitting next to Datto, and Datto raised some feedback that I very much agreed with, which was that a lot of the solo op stuff that we did was just boring. It was very dull. And I almost wonder if solo ops is one of the 4 core pillars of the game. It's like solo ops, fireteam ops, pinnacle ops, and then whatever the 4th one is. Like raid ops or whatever it's called. Like, if that's the way that we're going here, and a core pillar is solo ops needs to be more interesting, man. Because yeah, okay, I get it. 10-minute experiences on your own, but it's a weird one because I don't really want Bungie to be using their best ideas on like little 10-minute throwaway missions. But that means that I also kind of want solo ops to be dull. But then, like, it's weird to be like, do I want a core of the game to be dull? Like a core of the game's pillars, sorry, to be dull? Like, I don't know. It's just a weird, it's just a weird one. And on the flip side of that, actually, in terms of the sweatiness, because of the way that you customize the portal now, I'm very curious whether it's going to turn into fun sweatiness or annoying sweatiness, because the way it works is in order to get your tier 5s, you need to be at a certain power and you then need to be at a certain difficulty level. And that difficulty level, that rating that you have, like A or A+, comes from which challenge modifiers you have on in the customize menu. And that means doing things like no HUD, not swap, taking extra damage from certain elements, taking extra damage while you're airborne, you take more grenade damage, like there's all sorts of modifiers like that. And you stack a bunch of those all together, and that's what gets you your A+ rating. And then when you're at the appropriate power level, that means that you'll also be at a high enough metal rank, like diamond or platinum or whatever. And that combination gets you your tier 5s so long as you perform. Yeah, simple, right? But that system means that you're going to basically be sweating for your tier 5s. And right now, the equivalent sort of experience is you sweat in your GMs. So we're going from sweating in GMs to sweating in these. And I like the prospect that we're able to tweak the sweatiness a little bit to be more in line with what we want to do, what we find fun. But at the same time, I almost wonder if it's almost like a two-pronged issue where, on the one hand, if it's tuned so that the A+ platinum difficulty tier 5 grinds are significantly harder than GMs, then people are going to lose their minds, bro. Like, they already find GMs hard enough as it is. If it's even harder than that, people are going to be suffering, and there's probably going to be like a lot of bullet sponge issues and like stuff like that as well. But then on the flip side, if there's a correct kind of combination that you can do in your modifiers to still get your tier 5s but make it easy, then you suddenly have no reason to ever do a GM ever again, or a GM level experience, I should say, because you've just sort of found a way to like cheese it through easy challenge modifiers, like taking more solar damage in encounters where there are no solar enemies, like stuff like that, right? So I guess my comment here is that I think that there is a lot of really cool stuff in the customization availability in the portal, but it poses quite a lot of existential risks that we're just gonna have to watch play out, and they're gonna have to sort of continue to develop it over time, I think. I wanna be clear, I'm talking about stuff I didn't like in this video. Overall, I think the portal is a good addition to Destiny, but yeah, gonna take some iteration, I think, over the next several seasons. Now let's talk about the consequence of the portal's existence and how Destiny and Bungie are trying to kind of clean up some of the current issues with the grind. So we've got a new grind now. Hello? Hello, can you hear me? I'm from the future. I've been traveling for so long. It's all gone so terribly wrong. There's only one thing that you can do to fix it. It's the only way. You've got to subscribe. Thanks. Where every season you've got your permanent power, and then you've got a new seasonal power that's going to go away at the end of every season. So that's bumping you from 200 to 450 and then 550, and that will all go away again at the end of the Edge of Fate. So that's a lot of power to just lose. And you can only get some of those tier 5 high tier loot drops from playing the endgame difficulties in the portal with your power being high as well. And that means that if you don't get all the way up the power grind to power 400 or 450, which is double your permanent power, then that means that you cannot get tier 5 drops, as far as I understand it at least. And that's a big deal, right? Because what that basically means is that right now, if you're a dad and you play Destiny once a week and you jump into a random streamer's stream, you jump into Benny's stream and Benny carries you in PvP for a flawless trials passage, or you jump into Chantal's stream and you get a raid help and that gets you some raid loot that you've been struggling to get, right? That right now can just get you the thing that you are looking for. But as it stands with this new system, in my understanding, if you're not at that power level, then you're going to be at a metal rating of like gold or something, while Benny's going to be over there at a difficulty rating of platinum. And so the stuff that you're going to get is just going to be worse. Like you're just not going to be able to get the tier 5s. And similarly, if you're a solo player, like you just have to be at power. If you're not at power, you won't get the drops. And that's a weird change, right? It's weird to be in Destiny and go from the activity having a fixed reward that you know, if I do a GM, I will get blah, right? And to now be moving into a world where for every single activity in the game, we have to say, if you do activity, you will get blah if, like, that's a weird layer of complexity that I don't know if people are going to like. And specifically for new players, I worry a little bit that that's a level of abstraction from understanding that might be just one step too far for people. And it's going to mean that people miss out on loot. It means that you'll get to the end of a season and people will not have successfully gotten to the correct power level to be able to get those drops. And I'm sure there'll be catch-up mechanics and stuff. Like, they're not going to really let people miss out. But if they then do that, then it poses the issue of all the players that played for the first half of the season wondering, why the hell did I grind so hard to get this stuff now if I could have just waited for your catch-up mechanics later? So no matter what happens, people are going to kind of feel a bit burned by this system, I think, and I don't know how they're going to deal with that. Similarly, another rock and a hard place situation here is that you've got this armor rework, which has a huge number of positives associated with it that I've talked about in that other video, but there are a lot of people out there who are just sort of like, oh, it's soft sunsetting. And I mean, it's not, in my opinion. I don't think that that's what's happening here, really. I think that the armor system fundamentally needed to change, and I would much rather a bad system be removed than left there just because it got released and I have some loot from it and therefore it must be the case forever. Like, I don't want to inflict a bad armor system on future generations just because I've got armor that happens to be part of that old system. You know what I mean? So like, you can say sunset if you want, but what you see as sunset, I see as a better design for everyone. Like, everyone can now get this better designed armor that will be more fun. So I'm seeing it as a win, as much as this is a video about my critique, that specific comment. However, I think that there is some inherent risk with their thinking with regards to what the grind is going to look like for people season on season, right? From Season of the Reclamation, I think it's called, which is basically the Edge of Fate, to Season of the Lawless, which I think is basically spanning Renegades. So what Bungie is expecting people to do now is they're expecting people to jump in for a new season of Reclamation, and grind up 200 permanent power levels, then grind up from 200 to 450, the soft cap for the first half of the season. Then they'll be able to start getting their tier 5s once they're at 400 or 450. And all of the new loot, that's the new legendaries and all that stuff, that is going to get a bonus for the fact that it's new. You get like a small like damage bonus or whatever on new loot now to incentivize you to grind for the new stuff. So you're going to do that. Then in the Ash and Iron major update, which comes out 3 months after the Edge of Fate launches, which is halfway through the Season of Reclamation, God, it's so confusing, you'll then get a soft power cap increase to 550, so you'll be able to grind a little bit more power in the second half of it all, which will be, again, more opportunity for you to then be at the power that you need to be at in order to grind for your new loot, which is your tier 5s as well. So you kind of want both new stuff and new stuff at tier 5, and all that's going to happen while you're also leveling up your seasonal artifact, and that's giving you a kind of flavor of the season. But then when Season of the Lawless begins, suddenly you're going to be back to 200 power because your seasonal power is going to go away. You're going to be back to the start of your artifact because there's going to be a new artifact. And you're going to be back to grinding for new loot in the new expansion because that stuff will then have the plus whatever it is, 10% damage bonus, and the old stuff will no longer have that. And so you'll psychologically sort of be like, well, my stuff's not the new shiny stuff anymore, and it's objectively got a power diff compared to the new stuff, so I want the new stuff, right? So that's kind of the proposition of how this is all going to work. And my question is just, is it going to be fun? Like, is it going to be fun to do that? Is it going to be fun to basically feel like you are getting reset each season? Because Destiny, in a big way, is about the continuity, right? But it's also about the grind in the moment. And if there's no grind ever, then that's kind of boring. But at the same time, you don't want too much grind, and you want the stuff from the past to still feel valuable. And that's a difficult balance to find. And I'm really unsure, more or less, if this proposed system is going to achieve that balance. It's just sort of difficult to say, but I can see a lot of worlds where people are mad once Season of the Lawless starts, the stuff that they've grinded for here, and they were getting to 550 to get their tier 5s. Suddenly, it's the new stuff that has the buff, not the old stuff. Like, I can see that being problematic for people. And as much as I think in theory, on paper, it looks like a really smart solution, we're going to have to wait and see in practice. And this also brings me to the sort of like post-Edge clarity that I think that the community is going to get, which is that once Season of the Lawless starts, and once we start getting further in, and we start seeing what the new gear sets are looking like, and also, for example, we start seeing how we're going to earn old armor sets, because those will no longer be the current armor set, so they'll have to go into some other kind of earnable pool. Like, that I think is going to be very interesting as well. It's almost too early to evaluate now exactly whether or not this system is going to cause loads of much bigger problems down the line. But I'm waiting with bated breath to see how that stuff ends up, because it could be completely fine, or it could be really, really awkward, and also could make people feel like their grind this next season is totally worthless and totally pointless to have done if they could just as easily play with the previous season's stuff and get it all infinitely more easily if there's some kind of crazy catch-up mechanic when we get our post-Edge clarity. We'll see. So that's the meta stuff, right? That's the macro. Let's talk a little bit micro now about Kepler specifically. So new location, new story, lots of cool stuff there, as I talked about a lot in my positives video, so make sure you've watched that if you haven't already. But for some stuff that I wasn't so keen on, first of all, they've got world tiers in the location now, and I think that's it's good. Like, I'm not mad about that, but it didn't really feel like I should care. Like, when I'm out and about in the world, just exploring in Destiny, there haven't really been a huge number of situations where I've been like, I want this to be harder and I want to spend more time fighting these enemies as opposed to being in an activity. So I don't really know if I care about the world tiers stuff. A feature's a feature. I'm not gonna sort of complain that it's there, but I feel like it could maybe do with a little bit of pizzazz. Like, give me a reason to want to turn that up. As of yet, I haven't seen that, but it's early days. And a note I should also mention here, and I would like this to be applied to all of the content I'm making for Edge of Fate, is that I only saw a snapshot of the game, right? So like, especially some of this next stuff that I'm about to talk about, I don't really know if that's going to be the exact feel for it all once we all play it in linear order at release. There's stuff that they're changing, like it was in development, obviously. There's stuff that has already been fixed, like bugs that I encountered that are already fixed, and I just wasn't playing on a recent enough build to have seen the fixes. And there's also stuff which is maybe going to be caused, like problems that are going to be caused by the fact that I didn't play the whole expansion in order. I jumped around here and there to very weird, disparate parts of the story, for example, because that's what we were allowed to play. Like, they teleported us around to different missions that were not the order of the missions that we'd normally experience. Like, there's lots of stuff like that. So all of the stuff that I'm about to get into could be a non-issue when the game comes out, or rather when the expansion comes out, just to be absolutely clear about that. But I'm still giving my feedback based on what I played. So, in Kepler, you get all these location abilities, right? You get Matter Spark, you get the Relocator Cannon, you get the green thingy, which lets you move stuff around, like Matter Realignment, and you get the Rosetta, translation situation. And at face value, very cool, right? The idea of giving the player new moves, basically, that they can do. It's essentially just giving you 4 extra buttons on your controller to be able to press at specific times. Almost like getting a portal gun in Portal and then realizing the portal gun can shoot other colors and the portal gun can affect specific surfaces and it can pick up certain things and blah, 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 right? All of those verbs, as you might describe it for a sort of game development purpose, those new verbs that the player has access to in a sandbox like Destiny sounds incredible at face value. But for me, I didn't really love most of the execution of those Kepler abilities. And I want to be very clear about this. There were some instances where I was like, that's really cool. I think that is a really cool little puzzle that they've set up where I need to think about this in a smart way and be like, oh, if I teleport here with the relocator, then that gives me enough time in the Matter Spark to do this, and then I can go here and do that. There were a few moments like that. The problem that I mainly have was that they were very, very minuscule in their number compared to the vast majority of the puzzles that I experienced where they were just dull. And I've written looking for things here because that is what it felt like a large number of the puzzles ended up being. I would go into my Matter Spark form, the little ball, and I would then basically roll around looking for a hole to sort of enter so I can then zap a thing. And I was just looking for a vent. And is that fun? Not really. And could it have been fun? I think so. I think a more tightly designed sandbox would have really used those in ways that I felt like were challenging me in the fun ways, right? And instead, I kind of got a lot of looking. Granted, might be because I played stuff out of order, might be because I played a weird selection of the things, might not be a problem in the final thing at all. But having played through the final shape, and just some of the very small little sprinkles of things that they did in Final Shape, I was like, okay, I see that they're going in a specific direction here with the way that they're putting these puzzles in the world. I'd like to see them elaborate on that. And then when I saw the trailer stuff for Kepler, I was like, damn, this looks perfect. That's exactly what I want. But I just think the execution didn't feel as cohesive with all of the puzzling as I maybe would have liked. Way too much looking for things. That sort of relates to puzzle depth as well. there were sort of several instances where I was approaching a puzzle and I was thinking, oh, this could be really interesting. And then the solution was just to like do something that was kind of boring. Like I could just like hop over a wall in my Matter Spark ball and then just be done with it instead of having to like smartly solve the issue, which again is partly related to playing everything out of order. Part of it is this non-linearity thing also that we're going to get to in the story. But yeah, it was just like something that I found myself wishing there was more in-depth stuff around Kepler, because there's a lot of mysteries and some of them were very cool. Like I found one or two that I was like, damn, that was nice. Like I saw a little thing here and I was like, oh, I wonder how I get there. And then I had to kind of big brain my way through it. And I was like, oh, if I thread this relocator and I bounce it, like, that was cool. It's just that so many of them were just kind of too simplistic or too much just like, can I find a thing? Yay. And I think Bungie can do better than that. Now, this really does relate to a lot of the story stuff, but seeing as I've got the new enemies in the corner here, I want to just quickly touch on that. We got these Vex Bulls and Fallen Corsairs. I didn't care. They were just there. The Fallen with the like green pikes, they're just there. They're just enemies. I don't know if I'm unique in this, but I just didn't really feel like they were particularly interesting. They didn't provoke new gameplay styles in me. They didn't make me have to think on my feet. They were just there. And maybe that's enough, to be honest. Like, I like I can't remember their name right now. The enemies that we got in Final Shape, all of those dudes, and like the subjugators and the tormentors and like all that stuff. I thought those were really cool. As much as I kind of hate them because they're annoying, at the same time, to be annoyed is to be motivated. You know what I mean? Whereas these guys weren't really motivating me. They were just like flesh that I was just laying into, you know? Well, I guess the Vex ones weren't. You know what I mean? So yeah. Some stuff to shoot. I mean, could they have been more interesting? I think so. Do they need to be? Probably not. Like, I'm fine with the enemy sandbox right now in Destiny, personally. So, I don't know. Give me a droidica. No, don't do that. Don't get any ideas. Don't do it, Bungie. I was joking, saying give me a droidica in Renegades, and then we'll have our slightly more thought-provoking enemies. But yeah, no, absolutely not. But yeah, I just thought that they were whatever. Personally. Now, a quick counterpoint to that, actually, though, is the Aeonians as a friendly group of humans. Really cool. Really like that. More on the Aeonians in my positives video. Okay, so let's talk story. I think the story's in a pretty good place. It's a new saga, and there are a lot of people that think that Destiny's story is over, or they think that they've missed too much of the story to get into it. And so I've written New Saga as a problem here purely because they need to convey to people that they can jump into this story now and not feel like they've missed 10 years of storytelling. They need to do that. And I don't think they've done that successfully yet. Granted, the marketing has not fully spun up. There's more to come, no doubt. There's trailers, there's this, there's that. But Bungie really needs to convince planet Earth, that the people jumping into Destiny now are effectively jumping into Destiny 3. Like, that is the goal, really, that they have. Is like, we're setting up the next 10 years, right? And it's going to be a new story, and there's all this armor stuff so that you can get all this new armor, and that's going to be really good armor, and you're not going to be behind. And like, they need to convey that to people. Not seeing it just yet. The story itself, though, being a new saga, is a good thing. So that's kind of a funky one to be putting as a negative. But you understand my point. Now, level design-wise, in the story, sort of similar to what I was saying about Kepler overall, I wasn't blown away by the level design. I thought there was some completely fine stuff in there, but there were also several moments where I was like, ooh, this is designed this way. Like, you're educating me on using the relocator cannon in this way, where it kind of doesn't actually tell me that that's what I need to do. Similarly, there were quite a lot of moments where I'd get to the end of a character talking and I'd need to suddenly do a new thing, but it was never conveyed to me that I needed to do that thing. Like, some of the connective tissue was just a bit weak, weirdly, in the level design. And then the non-linearity thing here is interesting as well. I mentioned I would come back to this. Bungie has the challenge to face with the Edge of Fate that they want to experiment with stories that are less linear and that are therefore more interesting, right? Because they're new. It's a fresh take on what a Destiny story could be. And that's something that I 1,000,000% am very, very positive about. Like, I want them to experiment. I want that to happen. The problem is, Destiny is such an expansive sandbox that you introduce non-linearity, and it means that some of these really crazy puzzles that you've designed to be absolutely perfectly tuned with a certain set of abilities suddenly get totally rolled over when you've got an ability that's now one level higher than you'd expect it to be when you're at that point in the story. And so the puzzle becomes no fun because you just solve it instantly and you're like, what the hell was that? Like, why did it ask me to do that? You don't know that you just missed something that was like really tuned to be a certain way. This happened a lot in the exploration in Kepler. I suspect it will happen a lot less in the story specifically. But again, the story is non-linear, so you're going to get stuff at different times. So it is something that they're going to need to be acutely aware of. And I personally also, and this is very much a personal opinion, but I find it really annoying in games when I am exploring the world and I do a load of work to solve a puzzle, and then I kind of have the realization, oh, they're just meaning for me to unlock an ability later, so I have to come back here. Like, I find that really annoying, because if I see a thing, I think I should be able to solve that thing. Even if it's harder for me to do so, I think I should be able to solve that thing then. I shouldn't constantly have a load of things shown to me, and for the game to be like, you have to retread your steps later, bucko. Like, I find that annoying. Again, this might just be me, but there is so much of that in the Edge of Fate, so much, where you're like, oh, I did all this work to get to this chest, and then I get there and it says, you need a better understanding of an alien language. And I'm like, my Rosetta level is too low, and now I want to jump off this cliff and not respawn. Like, I don't like that stuff. And that is very much the design of Kepler, is we're going to show you a ton of stuff, and we're going to tell you that stuff is there because it says mystery on the side of your screen. We're going to tell you that stuff's there, but you are going to have to know when you should come back to it based on if it says your understanding of the alien language is too bad, then yeah, okay, you need your Rosetta level up and then you should come back. Like, I just don't think it's fun. I don't think it's fun. I think Bungie's approach and philosophy is it's fun to be able to choose the order you do things in, which I kind of get, but that is a type of ordering that I don't like. So yeah, the non-linearity thing, it's a little funky. Maybe other people will like that, and maybe I'm just an impatient troll. Don't know, but certainly for the way I play games, it's a pain point. I also want to talk about experimentation in general here, because I think Bungie have experimented a little bit in the form of storytelling for their story. I don't think they've done a huge amount of experimentation though. Like, it feels almost a little bit, just a touch, like the Shadowkeep campaign, where in the Shadowkeep campaign, you have a handful of nightmares that you need to hunt, and you can hunt them in any order, right? Similarly, we've got that sort of thing happening on Kepler, where there's certain things that you need to do. I'm going to be very vague here because I don't want to spoil anything. And some of those things can happen in alternate orders, but ultimately you're sort of heading towards the same this. You know what I mean? And so I think they've taken a step, but I worry a bit that because the Destiny, this isn't Bungie's fault, but because the Destiny community is so opinionated, right? I think if Bungie really leaned in and they made a type of game that was super different, like they made a story where it felt like a detective thriller, right? Like if they did that, I think people would yell at them for it not being Destiny. But then equally, when they make the same old campaign again and again, I think people yell at them for always making the same story or the same campaign or the same structure or whatever, the same missions, the same levels. And I don't know how they're going to get around that. Because what I want them to do is I want there to be an expansion where the story is a fishing simulator or something. Like, I want them to be weird. I think that would be so cool to get different snapshots of like Bungie's take on a story told through the medium of sparrow racing, like or Bungie's attempt at space combat as a story. Like, I want them to play with all these different possibilities in terms of both gameplay and then in terms of the storytelling that would be entwined within that. But I worry a bit that the community is just going to shout at Bungie no matter what they do. And so I think that they've taken a step in the Edge of Fate to be a little bit more interesting. But my fear is that they've had to actually rein it in because they've been a little worried that if they go too far off the rails into the really interesting territory, then they'll just get screamed off the internet. Like, I don't know. That's just a theory. No dev has said that to me. This is just my headcanon at this point. But I want to see them really blow the doors off, you know? Like, I want to see them mess about. And right now, we've got a little dabble, but I think that they could go several steps further down that path, and the game would actually be a lot better for it because it's the identity of the difference that they were seeking would be more refined at that point. I think that is maybe the most concise way that I can put it. It's a step right now, like I said in my other video, but I want them to take a leap. But again, my opinion, don't crucify me. Now, while we're on this side of the screen, I have to say, PvP was funky because we didn't really get to play it too much. But as far as I'm concerned, Destiny can never be a 10 out of 10 game. It can never be an elite game if the anti-cheat situation just is unresolved forever. And it seems like right now, when I talk to someone like Ali, and she's like, oh yeah, someone spawned into my game the other day, and they were driving around in trials as a tank, or like something like that. Like, that's not a specific example. That's just like stuff that I've heard people say, like people spawning in as like mini guardians and getting guns that aren't even meant to be in trials into trials, and like all sorts of silly stuff like that. Like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? And so one of the things that I didn't like about the early access event was that they didn't comment on that at all. There was no like, we're working on it. It was just sort of focus elsewhere, which is sort of fine for me because my focus is elsewhere. But at the same time, I also just went on a trip with Rainbow Six Siege and went to Brazil, got to check out one of the tournaments that they were hosting there. And they've got this big anti-cheat update where they've got multiple anti-cheats in the game now, and they can switch between them at any time. So all the cheat manufacturers are going to have their cheats basically hotfixed out of the game very quickly because they're going to be constantly changing the way that the anti-cheat works. And like, it sounds like a miracle cure for cheating or for anti-cheat. And meanwhile, Bungie's just sort of like leaving it, you know? And like, it's the same with just like overall, whether it's anti-toxicity stuff or whatever, I feel like Bungie has a unique issue here, which they have not yet solved. And I kind of get it because community moderation and stuff like that, it's like a very expensive thing to sort out. But I kind of feel like that needs to be on the radar at least. Like, they need to at least be acknowledging it, maybe. So yeah, would have been nice to see a little bit more PvP love, perhaps. Now, another thing that I'm a little worried about is the state and nature of Marathon and its relation to Destiny. Because at the end of the day, Bungie doesn't have infinite budget. Bungie is a company that, hypothetically, if all their cards fell over, could go bankrupt. And I don't like the prospect of embarking on a 10-year next chapter of Destiny when there is something in the room that could kill Bungie. And I say that not to be like hyperbolic, like, oh my God, red alert, panic, panic, panic. I'm just saying that because when you are a content creator, let's put it from my business perspective. This is going to be maybe an easy way to convey the point I'm trying to make. When you're a content creator, and I have a business making content, right? And I have employees on my payroll, basically, that rely on me to keep doing what I do. I have a responsibility to make sure that what I'm doing has some legs, right? Like, it's going somewhere. And that means, as part of my risk assessment, if I was like fully over-indexed on one platform, like YouTube only, then hypothetically, if something happened and YouTube disappeared just out of nowhere, maybe there was a big lawsuit problem, maybe the site gets hacked, maybe my channel gets deleted, who knows, right? Then if I'm all of my eggs in one basket, I'm a little bit screwed, right? So I would be looking at that being like, that's an existential risk that I need to be prepared for the sake of my business and for my employees who rely on me. Similarly, with something like game selection, if you're just like one game and you're putting all your focus into that, and there's some little potential risk that that game could just disappear tomorrow, then obviously it would be pretty irresponsible to continue putting all your eggs in that basket, right? You'd actually need to be thinking about, maybe I should diversify elsewhere, maybe I should be doing something else, maybe I should over-index on this and less, etc. And I think Bungie's going to be fine, and I think Marathon's going to be fine, and I enjoyed my time with Marathon, but the sentiment around it right now is so bad, like painfully bad, that I think it would be reassuring as a content creator with a business, and also as a fan of Destiny who wants to play Destiny for the next 10 years, let alone make content on it. I think it'd be reassuring to just know that Bungie is going to be fine even if Marathon goes nowhere. And it's an impossible one because Bungie really can't say that, because then it would sound like they're saying, yeah, when Marathon dies, we'll be okay. Like, they can't, they just can't do that. That's obvious, right? But I don't know. There's a part of me that's like, the sentiment is really bad, and it's very hard to launch games these days. In this current market, it's very difficult. So it's not exaggerative to say that Marathon might not be financially successful, right? That's just the nature of the industry. And all I would appreciate is to know that in that scenario, Destiny's going to be okay. I'm a little worried right now that Destiny might actually really suffer a bit if Marathon didn't financially succeed. And that's scary, right? So as much as I really want Marathon to be good, and I enjoyed my time with Marathon, like I said, and I will be playing it on launch and like all those things. And simultaneously, as much as I'm critical of the friggin' plagiarism thing, which is insane, which I'm doing a separate Whiteboard video on after all of these, once my voice is recovered, I'm a little worried about it right now. Just a little bit. So moving on from that, quality of life. This one is one that we already knew going into the Edge of Fate preview event that they weren't going to be increasing our vault space. They announced that on Twitter. We also knew that there weren't any crazy new loot management systems or anything like that. And as much as that's fine, I think it kind of goes back to actually this. I mean, maybe we should start here with the fixing the new player user experience, man. I feel like they're making some good steps, towards making the introduction to and general playing of the game easier for more casual players, right? That's good, but it's still crazy complicated. And one of the problems is that the in-game education for how to interact with all these systems sucks. And I say that with love. It's just that, as I said before, if you need to get to a specific outcome of like trying to make something happen, you have to step out of game for it. Similarly, the reason I bring up the quality of life stuff, if you're trying to like manage your vault, you just gotta go to dim. You just have to. If you're trying to do loot management stuff and like, if there's a specific weapon that you're trying to grind for and it's got like specific perk rolls and you really want that particular one, imagine how insanely useful it would be if you could select that, you could mark that in the game somehow, and then when it appeared, you either had it auto-locked or it had like a special border around it so you could recognize it really fast, like all those sorts of things. Just things to make it so that you could deal with the loot in the game better, because like right now, so much of the game is just scrapping stuff constantly. And to have a system where you could do that, A, more confidently, B, in-game without having to use external sources, and C, in a way that felt optimized and didn't take loads of time, I mean, that would be great. And it's just not there. So anyway, it's sort of a side point, which is that so much of the game is still so complex, which is fine. I'm okay with complexity. I'm just not okay with nonsense. And it feels like right now, there is still a lot of nonsense in the game, making it hard to understand why things happen a certain way, or where certain things are, or what gets you what, or all sorts of things. There's tons of it. And as much as the Edge of Fate and that season is taking steps in a good direction, I'd like to see some really revolutionary steps to say, okay, new players, we know that you don't know what the hell's going on, rather than just throwing you arbitrarily into solo ops and never educating you, by the way, in the portal, because ultimately the portal's just going to get people shooting and clicking heads. It's not going to teach them any of the other crap that they need to do, right? The portal doesn't solve the loot management issues. That's something that needs better education. It needs to be better communicated, and this is not the update for that, unfortunately, despite the fact that they need to get new players in. Like, there's a little bit of a disconnect there, I think. And it's another rock and a hard place, to be honest, for Bungie, because the fundamentals that they are fixing here, like people not knowing what to do, are kind of boring to talk about. Like, when you're trying to sell your swanky new expansion, do you really want to be sitting there and going, so we've introduced a new way for you to read the main menu? Who cares, right? That's not saucy. That's not something that you're like, oh, I need that now. Especially if you're a returning player. Like, the new players need to be the ones that that's communicated to, whereas the returning players need to have all the cool new stuff sort of surface to them. I feel like right now there's just like a little bit of a, I don't know, we're in like a waiting period where we haven't really seen Bungie do that yet. And we need it to happen soon, because the expansion doesn't come out in that much time. It's pretty soon now. And I feel like just in terms of communicating that, and then also appropriately dressing up these fundamentals to new players, even just letting them know that there's this new story and stuff. Like, I think that Bungie could do a slightly better job of that. We haven't seen it yet though, but it's early days, but also there's not a lot of time. So yeah, it's going to be a close one. So that's my list of sort of problems and things that I had with the Edge of Fate as I was playing. There's a ton more stuff that I could get into, both on the positives and the negatives side. But honestly, these videos have been pretty long, and I don't yet know whether you guys like me yapping about Destiny in this way. Like, this is new for me, right? I've never been to a Bungie capture event before. I've never been put in a position where I've had to sort of give my opinions about this sort of thing. And to be completely frank with you guys, I'm a bit intimidated that you guys are going to watch this video and be like, who's this poser? He's not been playing the game for very long. I hate him. So I would love to hear from you guys what you'd like to see from me next in terms of all the early footage and content that I've captured. I've tried my best to approach this in my way and put my twist on things, and also really make it clear that this is just my opinion, my humble opinion as a noob, and also I recognize that your opinions might be completely different to this stuff. Like, I've really wanted to try and make that as clear as possible. Whether or not that's come across, we'll see. But the next thing you're probably wondering overall is like, okay, you've presented these positives and these negatives. So what's the overall verdict, right? Like, do you like it? And the answer to that is an absolute yes. Like, I've been critical here of various systems, but I had a great time playing the Edge of Fate. Despite the fact that I would have liked the puzzles to be a bit deeper, I could probably say that about 99% of the games I've played in my life ever. Like, that's just me. I'm just like a nerd. And as much as I didn't like the non-linearity stuff so much because it meant that I kept running into these puzzles I couldn't do, other people might love that. Like, I recognize that is the case. And also, just because I find a relocated cannon before I can use it doesn't mean that I'm like, well, I wish I never paid for this. Like, it's not that deep, right? It's still good. It's just that I'm feeling like it's not perfectly tuned for me, but that's fine. And there's other things here where there are potential problems for some parts of the player base that are going to be actually great for others. So I mentioned that like people are going to miss out on tier 5 loot if they don't get up the power grind, right? And for some people, that's going to be a real concern. But that could easily have also gone in my positives video, because I like that. I like the fact that some people will never get certain loot. I think that's actually good for the overall health of games. So like, it's a complex one to evaluate so many of these systems and these processes and these changes when I know for a fact that there are multiple opinions which are all differing and yet all true, which relate to each and every one of them. So it's an impossible task to have an objective read, I think, on these things. Especially when you have the level of experience that I have, which is not that much. So it makes it even murkier to kind of navigate, but I had a good time. I liked the exotics that I played with. I really like the story direction and the way that they're going with that. I'm very curious to learn more about it because I really have not engaged with a huge amount of the new story stuff so far, but very, very keen on that. Can't wait for raid details. I overall like Kepler. The portal's a good addition, even if there's room for it to improve further. Like, these are just my critiques to offset my video of glazing that I put out beforehand. So hopefully you enjoyed this one, guys. Any feedback you have about the format, I would love to hear it in the comments down below. And the next video that you should probably watch, if you haven't already, is my interview with the devs, because that is maybe a little bit more objective kind of information about the game, because it's coming from the horse's mouth. And that video will be linked on the screen here as well. So, click through. Do it. I'll see you there.